much noise. Find the signal. The pulse. Yeah. Find a signal. Find a signal. Beyond the headlines, we cut right through. Find a signal. What's fake and what's not. The pulse tells you.
Hell yeah.
Heck
Look who
yeah,
it is.
game on. Loving that intro.
I mean, you got to give Na Young all the credit. She does it all. We're
100%.
back. You and I are back. I've missed you. Wow, we've not done this for way too long. Good to see you.
No, agreed. I think our last one-on-one kind of discussion like this was live at MBA.
That's right. Yeah, we were talking. We were up on the stage at 𝐓𝐡𝐞, and then during a break, we broke off to. Well, actually, that was a conference after that, right? We did
that
our
was Housing Wire. Yep.
Yeah, we did our thing in the lobby. We grabbed a table, and before we knew it, like 15,000 people. It's not because of me; it's because of you. You're one of the most respected voices in our game, and a voice that's not heard often enough. So we're gonna start the Pulse, and the Pulse came about. Jen, you had some really incredible ideas, and you and I have mixed and matched and done some other shows. But at the end of the day, I think I felt really strongly that you deserved a stage of your own. And, you are really big on noise versus signal and determining what's what. And so I got to be really careful not to speed here because you will call me out. And I have a tendency to get emotional. So sometimes I'm more noise than signal. So you got to help me and take it easy on me. My parents watch these things. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I saw your mom on No Surrender. I think she knows your MO.
Yeah. She said that I grew out of my terrible twos when I went to college.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So what should people expect from the Pulse? What are we doing here?
Well, I think this is what I will lovingly call the no bullshit podcast, right? So we're going to look at what's happening in the market. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it for real. What's really going to move something? What's not? Does any of it matter? Those types of things. Obviously that's our opinions, but I think that we're pretty thoughtful about considering other people's feedback as well. And, following these, if people have different opinions, reach out to us. And if we think we need to amend the opinion, we'll do that too. I'm happy to.
And we're doing this live. I love that. We had initially thought about taping, and then we're like, you know what the hell? Let's dive all the way in the deep end.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, and we love doing it. So without further ado, let's get into it right now, starting with the CPI mess, because is this noise? Is this signal? The consumer price index fell 0.4 in June, a bigger decline than investors anticipated, bringing its annual increase to 3.5. Expectations for an interest rate increase by the Fed in its July meeting declined sharply after the report, Jen, placing just a 17% chance of a 25 bip hike after giving it 42% just yesterday. Noise or signal?
Yeah, I think they're all misguided. I mean, if you look at the actual CPI numbers, the biggest decreases, between May and June data is in fuel costs, energy, et cetera. And is anybody paying attention to what's going on with the US and Iran? Right? We're back in a place where, crude and fuel prices are going up, $86, $88 today. And I think you're going to see all of that come back unless we see something, really get reined in, over with the Iran activity. So if you look at this, early year stability, right? January, February, the spring reacceleration, the core and, headline CPI, they really, came apart in May, right? You see that 4.2, 2.9 number. And now you're seeing what everybody's calling a cooling off in June. But that cooling off is energy, oil, et cetera. And that's not what's happening. If you look at what's happening with, like I said, the crude prices, fuel, look what's happening. 86.99 and counting again as of today. And, this visual really tracks to, the MOU, the ceasefire, and then, now the blockade has been put back in effect. The U.S. is now blocking, the Strait of Hormuz. And, this ceasefire has continued to break down, and they're, actively, taking action against each other. The U.S. and Iran, again, another large attack last night. In addition, another thing that's going to really, change things is, Trump needs to stop being ADHD on some things. Yesterday, it was, to get past the U.S. blockade, we're going to charge you a 20% fee versus the value of what you're transporting. Today, it's, there's going to be investments made in America and we're not going to charge the fee. So it's like you can't go from $200 billion of possible cash in to invest in us overnight with no details and expect the markets to just ignore all that.
Well, you don't expect that. I mean, that's his MO though, right? So
Agreed.
So that's probably not going to change. And I think everybody's used to it. What is alarming is that it can happen so fast. One minute you feel like you're on the road to maybe some calmer heads prevailing, and then the next thing you know, the missiles start flying again. And there's a lot to this, right? I mean, this is going to raise oil prices, as you pointed out. It's going to make inflation stickier. At the same time, you've got Kevin Warsh with his task force trying to get it all together and identify what he's going to do and how he's going to impact things moving forward. And so, he has said that he plans on making some changes here that are going to impact in a good way, according to him. And he said the Fed's number one objective is to get monetary policy right, or as near to it as we possibly can. That's our clear, consistent aim, the star we steer by. This was earlier today, I believe. And if we get policy right, and we will, the inflation surge of the last 5 years will be a thing of the past. How can you say that when there are things happening around you that you cannot control, no matter how many task force you have?
Well, I'm kind of hoping that he actually uses the task force well. The reality is those are either going to be helpful or they're not. Some of the appointees in those task force don't make sense, in my opinion. Some do. And some do not track to what he's usually been a fan of. He's usually been someone who focuses on, decreasing the size of the balance sheet. Well, not everybody he's appointing does. So I'm hoping he's looking to either learn something or come up with reasonable strategies that will not, impact things negatively. But, we also can't just sit around and wait for Kevin to, decide what he wants to do. We have to take action, right? And absent, something starting to chill over in Iran, this inflation number is going back up next month.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he said that inflation has been a tax on the American people and businesses. We plan on getting rid of that tax. I mean, this does not seem like Kevin Warsh's talk. I mean, normally he's very calculated. So I don't know where he's going with this, but it should be interesting. And I just have to ask you what you think. My colleague Kobe Hackelier, who does No Surrender with me, and you previously, Kobe, he's sometimes he's anti-Trump administration, and although he claims he's not, he did make the call. He did say that he didn't believe in the ceasefire. So I will give him credit on that. But when it comes to Warsh, he doesn't trust Warsh either. Like, he feels like 2.0 is in the bag for Trump. I would love to know your opinion. Do you think that he's going to pivot? I had to get the word out there. We love Pivot Financial. That's your company, right? Yeah. So do you think that Kevin Warsh 2.0 is going to be different than Kevin Warsh 1.0?
We can hope. But like the commentary you just read is very political, right? It sounds like it was written for somebody to say, it does not sound like a off-the-cuff comment that you would expect. Not that it wouldn't have been thought out previously with Powell, but Powell would have given you more of a market-centric, discussion. It sounds scripted. But with that said, I think everybody wanted to know if Warsh was just going to bow down to Trump and, decrease rates in his first meeting, and he didn't. With that said, I think the jury's out. I don't think you can call it one way or the other.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, like you said, his task force, he's got some hawks. He's got some hawks on there.
He
So
does. And there are
yeah.
some that are definitely more measured as well. So I think the real question here is going to be, does anybody listen? Right? Does anybody listen to the actual work that's done? Look at the real details of what is necessary to effectuate change in the market for the long term and not just do another band-aid, which is what's been happening for the last, call it 10 plus years. Band-aiding. Stop
Are
with
you
the
ready,
band-aid.
Jennifer? Are you ready to yawn? I've never called you Jennifer, by the way. Is it okay to call you Jennifer?
You can call me whatever you like.
I'm a
Nobody,
Gregory. I'm a Gregory, but I go by
I think
Greg.
Gregory and Jennifer's a little weird for us. I have to say, I think
Yeah.
Greg and Jen is usually what
Yeah,
we
you have
get.
to get on there. You have to get on there
You
and
can do
change your
whatever you
name. All
like.
right. Let's hear all about a yawn. Oh, I mean the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, according to the president.
That housing bill.
I have not. It hasn't been sent to me yet. It's coming. I understand, and then I'll make it. Here's what I would like to say. Much more than a bill. That big deal. It's a yawn.
It's a yawn. And I have to say, I kind of agree. I mean, there's some things in here that are that could be favorable. A lot on the supply side. None of that moves the needle overnight. There's no new money. There's even a provision in here that states no additional funds are authorized to carry out the act. So, Jen, what does and doesn't the 21st Century Road to Housing Act do?
So I'm going to tell you in its current state, without all the other things that have to be implemented, et cetera, I agree with him that it's a yawn. There's a lot of work that has to happen for any of this to move the needle. And one of the bigger things here, Greg, that nobody's talking about is how many of the actions needed to get any real outcomes here are now allocated to the FHA. Right. And FHA had a big, reduction in staffing in 2025. And then their budget was decreased 24% in 2026. And ththey've just been given, by virtue of this act, about 35 plus new jobs. And the question is, if you're going to have a reduction in staff and a 24% decrease in budget, how many of those new jobs can you really do? And the answer is not that many, unless you steal money or take money from other places if they don't give you any budget back, right? So what I would say is a lot of the headline is going to take a long time to be implemented, if it ever is implemented. So I'm going with, quasi yawn here, Greg, right? Some of the things that were big ticket items that are clear wins are clear wins until for one aspect, but it's going to take multiple aspects to move the needle. Manufactured housing modernization is an example. Getting rid of the chassis is one thing, but now you have to overhaul the process at the state level and create real financing programs via mortgage.
Jen,
for
let's stop
these
there.
types of
Let's
housing.
stop there.
Yeah.
Unpack getting rid of the chassis, because I'm going to be honest. I've been in this industry 29 years and I don't completely understand it. So I'll be vulnerable here and defer to you to say, what does that mean?
Yeah. Do you have the visual that I gave you on this?
Believe me, I am looking for it right now. Trust me, I'm looking
So
for it.
getting rid of
This
the
might be it.
chassis,
Here it is.
on a manufactured home, there was a chassis requirement. And the chassis required that every one of these homes be on a permanent steel, basically base. Okay. And that actually limited how the design of these homes could actually take place. So they, have looked more like the home you're seeing in this visual. But there are modular and other manufactured types of housing that really are put together in component parts or can be multi-story, some tiny homes, etc., that could also assist us with the shortage that we have in housing supply in our nation. So removing the chassis is one step for that, because now you can build multi-level manufactured housing and certain other things. But what it doesn't do is it does not actually make it so that this is more easy to finance. At the state level, there are ownership requirements, permit and inspection requirements, affidavit and conversions to permanently affixed. Remember, these things get delivered. Some of them are even on wheels, legal description requirements, etc. And you now need a new format at the state federal agreement level, because it's different at different state levels, to really move the needle here. And then financing programs would need to be revised.
So this is going to take, the bottom line is it's going to take a minute. They're focusing, the idea.
More than a minute.
Well, the idea is a good one, right?
It's a good idea.
It's an area that needs attention.
Yes.
But right now we have an affordability crisis on our hands.
This does nothing for affordability today.
Well, how concerned should we be about affordability? I'm terribly concerned about it.
No, I'm concerned about affordability. I'm significantly concerned because of the gap between wage increases and the price of a home. You know, you're talking about wage increases of a max of 3% when you look across the nation, and the price of a home, you know, is now 5x what it used to be. As an
but they're
example.
not. But the opposition, the critics, whatever, would say, the pundits, that homes are pretty flat right now, so they're not accelerating. So if you have wage growth at 3 to 4%, and you have houses roughly flat, that eventually the two will catch up to each other, and it'll be more normalized.
Yeah, no, you'd need a lot of other things to happen. You need the actual current prices to decline at least slightly, probably at least 4 to 5%. You'd need a bunch of other aligned issues to be rectified side by side. I actually did a post about it yesterday. But, you know, this is not a one size fits all. I know, like, you posted about ICE's report, you know, with regard to, you know, let's just get 16% home price decline, right?
That was tongue in cheek, by the way. A lot of people took that literally. They said there are 3 things that could make it happen. Any one of these 3 happens. And it seemed to me like a price decline was the most realistic of the 3. But you have told me in the past that's not a good idea, and that will break the entire system pretty substantially.
What it does is destabilize valuation, and valuation is a core component to how we price loans and understand what our possible losses would be if the loan were to default and the asset needed to be liquidated differently versus the borrower actually paying. So
yeah, and is that not just the part of the cycle? You know, I mean,
no, I think you got to stop thinking about cycles as, you know, housing crisis forward. You know, there were other corrections that took place, you know, in the years, you know, leading up to the housing crisis in 2008. Great example, you know, 97 to 87, there were all corrections, but a correction versus a crisis or a real reset are 2 very different things, right? When you look at, you know, the housing crisis, there was a really good reason that happened. You can't give every loan program to every borrower, and you can't, you know, tell the appraisers, you know, what the properties are supposed to be worth. You need independent verification, and you need to use the products that are really meant for each individual party and what they're looking to achieve from a home ownership perspective.
Jen, but I get a little lost here, so help put me back on the right track. And we may have just had our first disagreement, and look how well we worked our way through that. It's just wonderful. This is Jen and Greg 2.0, or Jennifer and Gregory, or Gregifer.
One of those people.
Yeah, could be there. Yeah, you know, like when Ben Affleck and Jen Lopez were dating, it was Benifer. We can be Gregifer, or it doesn't work the other way around.
Jenig. No, I'm just kidding.
So you had houses appreciate, obviously, and just at an unbelievable clip due to too much QE. It just, so are you saying that there are no repercussions to that should occur, that could bring things more in line?
It's not only QE, right? I think everybody likes to throw that out there. Let's just use
that last tranche of Biden money, the 2.1 trillion, whatever the number was.
Forget the Biden money.
That wasn't needed. That wasn't needed.
Forget which president was in there or whatnot. Common sense is prices are going to go up when there's not enough houses to buy. And all of a sudden we were all locked in our houses during COVID, right? You know, that wasn't exactly the time where everybody was going to say, ooh, I want to relocate right now, right? So a lot less listings, a lot less purchases. People only were moving, you know, if they were forced to. In most instances, there were some voluntary movements, but we've had some just odd things happen, you know, in the last, call it 15, 18 years,
That's my point. So how do we look at historical data and trends when looking at a house someone bought for 400 grand 5 years ago that within 2 years was worth 1.1 million? How do we look and say, oh, well, this is what happens in normal times?
Yeah, and I think, normal times is really a great question. What is the new normal, right?
Yeah, and the other question is what's around the corner? I mean, Stan Middleman wrote about this in his Seeing Around Corners book, Misery on the Eights. You had the financial crisis in 2008. You had COVID happen around 2018, 19, and now we're coming up on 2028. What is the next shoe that's about to drop?
Yeah,
we don't know. We don't know, or do we?
I think this is a prime example of everybody going, what's the next shoe that's going to drop? A shoe doesn't actually have to drop if we actually manage the markets effectively and efficiently. Cutting rates to be the answer and the solution to everything, and I'm sure I'll get lots of nasty grams for this comment, is not the way to manage the housing market. We need to get back to a place where reasonable rates stay in place and that we don't control the market overall by just cutting rates and doing.
Well, that's hard to do it's hard to do when we're fabricating things that are helping inflation get away from us, which we're now doing again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we could, dumpster dive like 29,000 different categories on this and, really look at them. But I think we want to stay in a common sense place for a minute.
I've always wondered what it's like to jump in a dumpster, to dive in have you ever?
I don't know, but if it was on fire, it wouldn't be any fun.
No, that would suck. But diving in a dumpster would probably be pretty damn nasty. But Jen, look, I know I cut you off. I'm sorry. You love when I cut you off. That's why I did it. That was a joke, by the way. I got you to smile. That's amazing. I'm having such a good time. I missed this. What the hell were we thinking, taking 2 months off? Actually, it's been longer than that. Life happens, right? But here we are again on the pulse. We're moving right along at a crisp pace. What else do you want to add here? Well, let me before I and I asked you a question. See, my hyperactivity is taking over. The thing that really puzzles me is why we didn't get even a temporary adjustment in LLPAs or a temporary adjustment pointed towards first-time home buyers for G fees. Like or something to do with FHA and the statutory limit, which is 6X. Like, how did they just not know that these are levers that they can pull? They don't have to be permanent. You can lower LLPAs for a certain set. They can do things like what? Why haven't they pulled those levers, especially in an election year?
They've been more focused on making headlines than they have been at really adding value to our market. So I think we all thought when Barry Habib was put on, the board at the GSEs that, that voice would be listened to or get more traction. And we were waiting for it. And then all of a sudden we were only looking at adjustments for, investor and second homes. And it's like, could we get some real experts on these boards, in these discussion groups, to have these discussions and effectuate change that makes sense? It does not make sense on certain assets to have the level of LLPA that's in play. But the G fee, look, at the end of the day, that was always there. It's too expensive today, for sure. It needs to come down. But the amount of money in rate, price, etc., that the GSEs are charging today is way more than the risk that they are taking. And I agree that should be a core focus. But, everybody's more focused on making headlines, right? Let's stop focusing on headlines and let's start focusing on reality.
Well, when Barry was working closely with them on this change, was refis and second homes, investment properties, I think. But I think they did that because they were definitely planning on taking the agencies out of conservatorship. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now. Maybe they just haven't. Could it just be as simpleton as they just haven't revisited that conversation?
No, I think it could be as simpleton as they need to start allowing the experts back in the room to have the discussions.
No, why don't we start?
Fannie and
Freddie
Fannie and Freddie have a vast array of very talented people, and they're not necessarily being made part of all of the discussions that are happening. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. And I think you're seeing decision-making without deep dive expertise and impacts of assessment. And I think we need to get back to, the people that really know how all of this stuff happens and how to keep assets performing, serve the customer well, need to be back in that discussion. And we need to ensure enhanced liquidity is available, that we're not going to be stuck in a conservatorship world for, the rest of our lifetimes, Greg, for example.
Are you available to be in that room?
Absolutely.
All right. Excellent. Our mutual friend Aaron D. in the comments, Texas and Florida ran up prices when Cali and New York people moved there voluntarily during COVID. Those are the markets declining the most. Stephen Moy says the administration is praying that AI implementation will increase productivity enough to create disinflation. You want to chime in on either of these points?
No, I think it's good points. You did see a run up in the states that Aaron's referencing. I think you're also seeing certain corrections now because of the over run up. Stephen's spot on, right? You can't, be AI is not going to solve everything. I understand that at every conference we have 17 different, panels about it right now, but AI is not going to solve everything.
Jen, before we go, I want to congratulate you on yet another award, and you are standing here with my dear, dear close friend and president of my company,
and one of my favorites,
LaTosha Waddy. She's incredible. This is the second day in a row I've told people how incredible she is. She deserves that and then some, and so do you. Congratulations on this honor. Tell us what it means and when you received it.
I think the Mortgage Star is an important award because it not only looks at what you're accomplishing in this industry and the change that you're effectuating, but it also looks at women who are looking to assist and, really take part regularly in bringing other women up the curve in this industry and providing or coaching them through enhanced opportunities. So a lot of women were recognized. I think it was 14 total this year. I kind of love this since we swapped posters. It shows the support that both LaTosha and I have for women in the industry. And, look, we were also having chats there with other women about who should be Mortgage Stars next year. And I think that's the whole point. And this award is, in concert with Mortgage Women Magazine, the Mortgage Women Leadership Council, National Mortgage Professional, et cetera.
Well, congratulations to you and my colleague, LaTosha Waddy. Congratulations to us for the Pulse, getting through the first edition. Now I have you all to myself, which is great. This is how it all began, and this is the ride we're going to go on now for a really long time. Jen McGuinness, thank you.
Thank you, Greg Sher.
All right, the Pulse is over. We'll be back. See ya.
See ya. Bye.
The